What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. The National Football League is well and truly back, as we very well know. And this weekend, it is round 2 in the National Football League, the second round of fixtures. And obviously, in the first weekend, some absolute cracking games, some cracking moments, plenty of talking points. And we are here today to preview and predict round 2 of the National Football League. Now, normally for these previews, I will be getting another guest on and we'll run through the games together and obviously preview, predict them. And obviously, a lot of them are usually recorded live, but I am a bit busy on Wednesday and Thursday evening this week. Obviously, you're watching this on Wednesday evening, but yeah, a little bit busy this week, hence why I'm pre-recording these predictions for a change. But nonetheless, it is just me to predict these games, so you'll have to put up with just myself, unfortunately. But nonetheless, a lot of games to run through, a lot of games to predict, 16 games in total. You also have the National Hurling League that's starting this week as well, but I'll be predicting those games in another video, and hopefully we'll have a bit more of an in-depth prediction for those games as well. And yeah, great to have the Intercounty GA back, great to have Intercounty football back, and very excited to run through this weekend's football. Well, I suppose let's crack into it. And first of all, look at the Division 1 fixtures. And I mean, Galway, Roscommon, first of all, massive game for both sides. And especially after Roscommon delivered a huge victory against Tyrone, beating them by 5 points. A massive victory, their first win over Tyrone in 20 odd years, as we were saying on the podcast on Monday. And here we go then, going away to Galway, going to their backyard. I think they beat Galway in their own backyard last year. Or actually, it was in the Hyde, wasn't it, in the final day of the season? But it was a game that didn't matter very much, but they did obviously go out and beat Galway in Croke Park in the Division 2 final before Galway exacted their revenge in the Connacht Senior Football Final. So these two very familiar with each other. There's no love lost here. Always a rivalry between Galway and Roscommon. I don't think the rivalry between Galway and Roscommon as big as Roscommon Mayo or Galway Mayo. But I think there's still a bit of a rivalry here, and there's still a bit of no love lost, shall we say, and all the rest. But look, a great opportunity for Roscommon. I mean, after beating Tyrone, after playing as well as they did, Galway won't have some of their significant stars back in the likes of Shane Walsh and Tom O'Culhan, who's obviously out injured at the moment. A few lads playing Sigerson Cup at the moment as well. Could that maybe have a bearing on Galway? In this game, and Peter Cook is obviously still come back from Mike Cullen. Desi Keneally not fully entirely fit just yet. We obviously seen Finnerty go off with an injury as well. So a massive opportunity for Roscommon to go to Galway, turn them over without Galway's players being available. And I'm very excited for this game because I'm excited to see Roscommon and see how they can do away to Galway. Because if they could go there, turn them over, they're halfway. First of all, they're halfway to survival. More than halfway, as a matter of fact. I think 6 points is what's needed. But I think all of a sudden then, if you do beat Galway, I think Roscommon should be looking onwards and upwards about potentially getting to a league final or possibly even, being there or thereabouts. And I think there's massive potential to do so. From a Galway perspective, I mean, it was obviously disappointing to draw the game against Mayo, considering they're in a fantastic position, but they do still have a lot of lads to come back into the side, and there were still impressive performers, the likes of Sean Kelly, who got a very good goal. Still expecting to see more of Paul Conroy and Killian McDade, who were fairly quiet enough as well in the game versus Galway. So, yeah, I feel like this could be a bit of a cagey game. So maybe not cagey, but I think with the fact that these two are likely to play each other again in the Connacht Championship, two sides that are very familiar with each other. I think Roscommon have that bit more work done at this moment in time in terms of how they looked against Tyrone and how well they performed. Enda Smith, who came off the bench against Tyrone, was fantastic, setting up 2 goals. And, Ben O'Carroll, what a fantastic addition he could be, scoring 1-2. Do you now start German Murta as well? It'd be interesting to see what way what way Davy Burke approaches this game. But I'm going to be honest, predicting this one is very hard because I think Galway are the better side overall. But I think with some of the players missing, with the fact that it's an opening league game, it could be another draw. And I don't always like predicting draws because it's sort of an easy cop-out of not giving a prediction. But I do look at this and think it really could be another draw here. And I think that's what I'm going to go for, to be honest with you. I think Roscommon have got a bit more legwork done, but I think seeing them go to Galway, turning them over, beating them, I just don't know if I quite see that either, because I think Galway will want to respond to not beating Mayo last week. So yeah, I'm going to go for a draw. But I think this could be very, very close and competitive, and really like a late points possibly in it. This is going to be a very, very close and competitive game in my opinion. But do let me know in the comments down below what you think will happen. Armagh versus Mayo, another huge, huge match, and a game that, like, maybe not huge in terms of the outcome of the season, but for supporters, I think these two counties are football mad counties. Like, they bring the supporters. Like, I think this game is going to sell out in the Athletic Grounds, to be honest with you. Tickets might have already sold out, by the time people are watching this podcast. But yeah, like, I think it's going to be interesting, because Mayo, obviously, you've seen a real kick from them under Kevin McStay in that opening game. And, they were bringing Killian O'Connor off the bench, who made a bit of an impact late on. Kevin McLaughlin as well. Still have Tommy Conroy to come back. It'll be interesting to see when Tommy Conroy becomes available. I haven't necessarily heard when he could be back, but I'd imagine it would be some point further down the league. Ryan O'Donoghue, outstanding performance from him the last day, scoring 6 points. And Armagh are obviously missing a couple of players themselves. Obviously, still have the Mackins to come back in. I'm not too sure what's happened to Oisin O'Neill. I know he was injured last year. He obviously didn't play for Crossmaglen, I don't think, in the Armagh Senior Football Championship. So I presume he's still out with an injury. But I remember 2 years ago, when Armagh were playing in the Division 1 sort of mini league because of COVID, he was outstanding in around midfield. So be interesting to see if Armagh can get him back at some point as well. Big match. I think Armagh with a home advantage, of a funny feeling they will go and beat Mayo. I think Mayo still have a lot more lads to come back into the side. Kevin McStay still sort of fully figuring things out there. And I think a stronger Galway side and a Galway side further on down the league, I think, would have put the nail in the coffin for Mayo. But I do think they're moving in the right direction. I think Kevin McStay has got a tune out of these lads, and even the likes of James Carr and Aidan Orme, like they've a lot of options and a lot of depth in their squad. Like Jordan Flynn was another player I was impressed with as well. And it is another very hard game to call. It's another game that I think could go either way, could possibly be another draw. But that's the thing about the National Football League, and that's the thing that I think makes it so exciting, is that, a lot of these games are so, so hard to call. But yeah, I'm going to go for Armagh to pull off the narrow victory. I think they weren't overly, like, obviously when you're watching the highlights on Allianz League Sunday against Monaghan, still a lot of work to be done, and it wasn't perfect from an Armagh perspective. But I think they will be targeting this league, and looking at this game at home in their own backyard with the fans behind them, with the sort of good buzz that's around Armagh football at the moment, I think they'll have too much for Mayo and beat them by 2 points. Kerry versus Monaghan is the game up next. And, Monaghan, although they got beat by Armagh, certainly some positives to take from a Monaghan perspective. I mean, considering Conor McManus still has to come back from injury. Obviously, the big, big blow would have been the fact that Jack McCarron went off injured early on. Not having Conor McManus is bad enough, but then not having Jack McCarron, it really does limit Monaghan's attacking options, in my opinion. But like, in saying that, Micheál Bannigan stood up with 4 points the last day, and he was fairly impressive. And, he looked like a good performer there from a Monaghan perspective. And even just looking at it here as well, like, obviously Conor McCarthy scored 1-2 the last day. So, he's been a player as well. I remember in 2020, 2021, looked very, very impressive. And just, he's always looked good at club level, but maybe not quite kicked on from Monaghan and been consistent enough. So I think if Vinnie Corey can get the best out of him, maybe Monaghan might be able to pull off a shock or two. Kerry, on the other hand side, beaten by Donegal, but, a lot of players to come back in. I think they were missing 7 or 8 starters from the side that won the All-Ireland. It'll be interesting to see how long Jack O'Connor leaves it before bringing back Clifford, before bringing back Sean O'Shea. It is interesting because obviously it's been 2-3 weeks now since the All-Ireland Junior Club final. I think Clifford is fairly fit from what I've heard. I don't think there's too much of an injury issue there. So could they be introduced back into the side for this game? Maybe making a cameo appearance off the bench. That could be interesting. Shawnee O'Shea hasn't played, I think, since Kenmare Shamrocks in the Kerry County Championship. So whether there's an injury there, I'm not entirely sure. But, you don't want to leave it too long in the league before introducing these players back because, Kerry aren't going to get significant tests in the Munster, in my opinion. And that then leaves a scenario where the league is perfect for them to get tests, to get players up to speed, to integrate players back into the side. So I'm going to go with Kerry to get the victory here. I think at home in Killarney, even if they are under strength, I think they should have enough. I think it would be some story if Monaghan could go down there and get a victory. And it would really turn the tail of the league in many ways because, for Kerry to lose to Donegal and Monaghan in the opening two games, two sides that I've predicted to get relegated and a lot of others have as well, it would leave a scenario where all of a sudden you're looking at it and thinking, could Kerry be in a spot of bother here, and they could be forced to maybe bring lads back sooner than expected. So I fancy Kerry to get the victory. I think Jack O'Connor, he'll want to tune out of Killian Spillane, who was very quiet the last day. I think there have been question marks over this Kerry side in the past when they don't have Clifford, when they don't have Sean O'Shea. I remember seeing Joe Brawley openly saying in an article on The Independent, I think it was, or The Examiner, one of those, saying Kerry without Sean O'Shea and David Clifford would not have won the All-Ireland last year. Now, I don't disagree in the sense that with those two players, those two are two of the best in the country, but still think they've plenty of good talent. And, Paul Gainey maybe to come back in at some point as well, Paddy Clifford as well. So a lot of players to come back in, but I am going to go with Kerry to get the victory. Tyrone against Donegal is another interesting one as well. And big pressure on Tyrone here because they play Kerry and Mayo in their next two matches. Or they play Galway and Mayo actually in their next two matches, I think it is. So, if they don't get any results there in this one against Donegal at home, I think relegation surely has to be on the agenda. I think it probably already is in some ways. But I think this is a massive game. It's almost like, you see in soccer, for example, in the Premier League down the years where they talk about 6-pointers where, two teams from the relegation zone are playing each other. And it's, the game's almost worth 6 points because of the fact that if you lose, you're given 3 points to the opposition as well as not getting 3 points yourself. And maybe we could call this a 4-pointer because Tyrone, if they lose this, they'll be 4 points behind Donegal, a side that I think will be thereabouts in the relegation zone. And you're playing catch up then to a lot of teams. You're playing catch up, and I know this as a Dublin fan last year. Losing 3-4 games at the start of a league, you give yourself so much to do, and you put yourself into a difficult position. And I think for Tyrone, if they were to lose this, they would be in big trouble. And obviously, Dara Canavan, I thought was the only player who looked decent for Tyrone's attack. Conor Moyler, very quiet. Noel Sludden came off the bench, made a bit of a difference. Darren McCurry came off the bench and made a bit of a difference. But, Cathal McShane, I think maybe went off with an injury. But generally speaking, Tyrone, it just hasn't been foreign for them. And, I've said in other podcasts, other previews and everything else, I don't understand why Rory Canavan doesn't play for Tyrone. I just don't get it. I understand that he still has another year maybe with the under-20s and you don't want to rush him. But clearly, for me, he's proven he's good enough for senior football. He's done it in the Tyrone Senior Football Championship, was critical to Errol Kilkieran winning the Tyrone Championship, critical for Tyrone winning the under-20 All-Ireland Championship. What more does he have to prove, in my opinion? Maybe you don't start him, but at least you have him in the panel. Conor Cush is another one as well who looked very good in pre-season. So, for a Tyrone perspective, they need to introduce some younger lads, some fresh faces, just to sort of mix things up. But from a Donegal perspective, that win over Kerry, the amount of confidence that will give them and Paddy Carr is absolutely huge, considering, the word on the street has been that there's been a bit of turmoil in Donegal, with the new manager and everything else. So you're looking at it and thinking, Caelan McColgan, very, very good player, finished the day with 3 points. Paddy McBrearty, clutch player. How many times down the years has he produced big winning points in big moments? You still have the likes of Michael Langan to come back in, possibly Kieran Thompson as well. So, Donegal, they're in good steads, and I think they're going to beat Tyrone. I think it's a bold prediction, and I think going away to Tyrone, to Healy Park, which is a very hard thing to do, but like Donegal have a great record against Tyrone in the league. I think they've beaten them in the league the last 3 or 4 seasons, from what I remember. And aside from that, or that Ulster semi final in 2021, like I think Donegal have beaten Tyrone 5 of the last 6 times they've played each other. Like, they have a very decent record against Tyrone. So, yeah, I fancy Donegal to get the victory, and that might surprise people. And I think for Tyrone, there just is a lot of issues there and problems, and I'm not sure how you fix them from last week. I think it will be closer and it will go down to the wire, but I'm going to go with Donegal to get the victory and win by 2 points. Oh, Limerick versus Dublin then is the next one on the agenda. And, look, I think it goes without saying that Dublin should win this comfortably. Limerick finishing with 4 points versus Derry. I think that speaks volumes, really. Finishing with 4 points. And it's tough for Ray Dempsey and Limerick. I mean, to be playing Derry and Dublin in your opening 2 matches. I mean, you talk about the fixture list being so unkind to you, and they would have took nothing from Derry. No positives, no moral victories to bring into this one. In their own backyard in the Gaelic grounds. With the Dubs coming to town, you'd imagine there'd be a good atmosphere and plenty of fans looking to tune in and everything else. But yeah, it's been a long time since Limerick and Dublin have played each other as well. Like, I think it's been about 20 odd years since these two have played each other. I think you need to go back to Division 1 or Division 2 in the league, maybe the last time, these two actually met each other. So, there's not much to go off in those regards. But look, as a Dublin fan, not only expecting a victory, but I think the most important thing for me is the performance here, because last week against Kildare, we were very poor and we got out of jail and we probably should have been beaten. So, I think Dublin need to put the nail in the coffin here, build up a good victory. 10 plus points really should be what Dublin are aiming for here. Score difference could be important as well. Like, let's not forget, you look at last year and how important score difference was there. And score difference in the end was actually what's seen Dublin get relegated. I think it was, or actually no, I think we finished with a point less. But Kildare, for example, were relegated with score difference. It does happen. So I think building up, this is the type of game where you put out a 10 plus victory, and you build up that score difference, which could be vital further down the line. Especially when you look at how Derry are beating teams. So yeah, like, in terms of players maybe to come back in, I mean, could you see Jack McCaffrey feature here? Like, he's going to be introduced in the league at some point, you'd imagine. This is a nice game, I think, to play him personally. A great opportunity for a lot of young players as well, like the likes of Greg McEnany, the likes of Killian O'Gara, who made cameo appearances. Ross McGarry didn't impress too much the last day against Kildare, but he's been a player that a lot of people have looked towards. Lorcan O'Dell as well. And obviously for the likes of Con O'Callaghan, Dean Rock, like, you need to get them up to full fitness, because Dublin, like, a lot of those lads didn't really, like, none of them featured in the O'Byrne Cup. There was a lot of changes throughout the O'Byrne Cup. A development squad very much played. So I think for that, Dublin have to bring more lads into the side, and they have to look to beat Limerick quite comfortably. And I think they will. And I think I'll go with an 11-point victory against Limerick. And that might seem like a lot, but Derry beat Limerick by 14 points. And I think there will be an improvement from Limerick, but I think just after that poor performance from Dublin, there's going to want to be a response. And, I think if this result is anything less than 5 points, and that, there's just margins between these two teams. It's not being disrespectful to Limerick, but if there's anything less than 5 points from a Dublin perspective, I would be quite worried, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, we'll go with the 11-point victory there for Dublin. Meath and Clare up next. Obviously, Meath coming in on the back of a sensational win away to Cork. A huge victory in the end, winning that game 3-14 to 19 points. And Meath really putting themselves on the map a bit after, a lot of people thinking they might get relegated and, to be there. And look, they might still be thereabouts. And I still think there'll be bumps in the road for Colm O'Rourke. And Clare have been a tricky opposition for me down the years. You think of when they obviously got beat by Clare last year. And obviously for Clare, I mean, like, they played with fire against Louth, and they were 3 points down going into injury time. They could have been in massive trouble, in my opinion. And I think a better side there probably holds on and gets the victory. Jamie Malone obviously getting a dramatic late point in that game to see Clare over the line, which was, absolutely huge from a Clare perspective. Owen Cleary, Gavin Cooney all getting on the score sheet as well. So they massively got out of jail in the end in a game that, I think had 7 minutes of injury time. And from what I've heard, a lot of Louth supporters weren't too happy with those added on minutes. So I think looking at it from that angle, Clare didn't look that good against Louth. And obviously we're going off what people are saying because we didn't see any highlights of the game. So can Meath and Colmore capitalise on that momentum at home in Navan? Bit of a carnival atmosphere. It could be another draw, this one. It really, really could. This could be a draw. But I look at it and think there's bound to be a good buzz around Meath at the moment. But are they there just yet to be Clare? I'm not entirely sure. Like Shane Walsh, I think the big criticism that Meath supporters have had of him is that he hasn't been consistent enough for Meath. Goes out and scores 1-7 against Cork. And what you want to see is players being consistent, because that's what Meath have lacked in the last couple of years. So I think there will still be bumps in the road for Meath, but I think I will go for a draw. I'll sit on that fence for this one as well, I think. Just because Clare are always a tough team to beat, and, Meath's record against them in the last couple of years hasn't been perfect. So I'm going to go for a draw. Could be wrong, but that is what I'm going to go for. Louth versus Derry. Derry, on form at the moment in terms of how strong they're going and how well they've approached the league. Derry are almost treating the league like championship, like they're getting Conor Glass straight back in. And, just before I actually press the button to record this video, Watty Graves Glen and Kilmacud Crokes, the replay looks like that's going to happen, which is mental, really, although I'm sure there will be some objections and everything else to that, and the story is far from done just yet. But Conor Glass coming straight back in, it was a game you didn't need to play him because Derry would have beaten Limerick anyways. But Rory Gallagher is not messing around. I mean, Shane McGuigan with 9 points the last day. Lakeland Murray obviously playing as well. Still have Emmett Bradley to come back into the side. But Derry went very, very strong. And realistically, you can't see anything other than a Derry victory here. I mean, as we were saying, the fixture list has been quite tough for Limerick, playing, two sides who are battling for promotion. But Derry's fixture list has been quite kind to them in the opening 2 games, with the fact that they play Limerick and Louth, 2 sides that they should be beating quite comfortably. And look, as I was saying when I was speaking about Clare there, like Louth showed, good bit of positivity against Clare, like Sam Mulroy scoring 5 points. He's always a danger man. And we know how Mickey Hart's going to approach this game. It's going to be very defensive, blanket defense, a lot of men behind the ball. They're going to play a sweeper. It's going to be hard, they're going to invite Derry onto them and say, look, can you break us down? And I think Derry will have to bide their time and be patient, but they will slowly pick off Louth. And I think I can't see any goals in this game, but I can see Derry winning by 6 or 7. I think it will be fairly comfortable in my opinion. And for Louth, like, they would have taken confidence from, nearly beating Clare in their own backyard. And is it a bit of a moral victory? Probably not, because they conceded 4 points in injury time. But you can see that Louth, they're going to be competitive in this division. And they're going to be a tough team to beat. And I think Derry will have to be, they'll have to be patient, and they'll have to bide their time in picking off what is a very, very stern, Louth side. Moving on then, Kildare versus Cork. Obviously, Cork coming off a nightmare result against Meath, and all of a sudden, Cork, who play Kildare and Dublin in their next 2 matches, could be in massive, massive trouble. If they don't get anything from this game, and they, they're leaving themselves in a spot of bother, but it's weird because both of these 2 teams are kind of similar in some ways, in the sense that, both can lead you on a bit, and both sides at times look like they're onto something. They look like they're building towards something. And then there's just a shock result, and you're like, Jesus, I did not see that coming. To be fair to Kildare under Glenn Ryan, they look as if, Kildare have turned the corner a bit, and they were very consistent in the league last year. Even though, they got relegated, they still finished with 3 wins, or 2 wins and a draw, I should say. And, for Kildare, who've really struggled in Division 1 through the years and, haven't really been able to compete with the top teams since you'd probably say 2010. Being able to do that last year showed that they had turned the corner in many ways and even nearly beat Mayo in the championship. But you were looking at it against Dublin, a massive opportunity missed, in my opinion, to beat Dublin, and what a statement that would have been, and it really would have given Kildare a huge boost in confidence in this promotion race. But look, going at home, Jack Robinson was outstanding the last day. 3 points against Dublin, was very impressed with him. I thought Neil Flynn done very well. And with Kildare, like physically, you can see they're there. Technically, a lot of very good forwards in Jimmy Hyland. Jack Robinson, as I've said before, Derek Kirwan looks like a very good player. Still have Daniel Flynn to potentially come back in at some point. So Kildare, like, there's a lot of good moving parts with Kildare. They have a lot more work done. And the worry for Cork is that defensively, like, a lot of question marks. And we didn't expect to see this after Kevin Walsh came in. But there's a lot of defensive question marks with Cork. I mean, they conceded 3 goals against Meath. Two, very, very sloppy goals. Didn't really, offer too much in terms of creating goals themselves. And, Stephen Sherlock scored 14 points the last day, but 11 were from frees, and that's quite an unusual statistic, for score 19 points and 11 of which to be from place balls. And, that'll be something that I'm sure Kildare will look at and think, look, we can't show any indiscipline here. So look, Cork, like, after that defeat, they'll want to be a response. I do think John Cleary, like, he's shown that he can't, like, this Cork side can be organised, they can get results, but if they lose this, they could be in trouble. So it's a tough one to call, but I am going to go for Kildare. I think they've more work done at the moment. They've better overall forwards. Cork do probably actually have the best forward on the pitch in terms of Stephen Sherlock, but Kildare are more well-rounded and have more options, and that's why I think that I fancy them to go and turn Cork over at home. Moving on then to Division 3. Offaly versus Fermanagh is up next. I mean, what a story for Fermanagh beating Longford. I mean, that was extraordinary. Sean Quigley doing Sean Quigley things once again. I mean, this guy, what a servant he's been to Fermanagh football, and how many times has he been the man to just really drag Fermanagh over the line, and a big 7-point victory. Darragh McGurn getting a couple of points that day as well. He's been a young up-and-coming player. I did an interview with him actually a couple of years ago. So it's nice to see him sort of making a bit more of a breakthrough into the side and sort of making that step up. And Fermanagh are always just one of those sides that you look at and think there is a lack of quality. Maybe they don't have the players, but they have a knack of just pulling out results when you least expect it. But Offaly, a side that we all sort of look at as a team that should be battling for promotion. They are missing a lot of players. I mean, I did see Liam Kearns said in the post-match interview after that win versus Antrim that, it looks like Noel McNamee won't be coming back. He said he's 99% sure that he isn't coming back. So interesting that we're sort of, a week into the league and he still doesn't know if he's coming back. So, probably does suggest that he isn't. Still have Cian Farrell, Keith O'Neill, Cormac Egan, Jack Bryant, like a lot of young players still to come into the side. And I suppose from an Offaly perspective, it was good to see, Anton Sullivan, experienced head, kicking 3 points, Bernard Allen coming off the bench, getting a goal, Dylan Hoyland with 4 points as well. And it wasn't perfect against Antrim. Like I was looking on Scorebio, and in the final 10 minutes or so, they conceded 4 or 5 points up until they got themselves a late goal to sort of seal the victory. So it hasn't been perfect from an Offaly perspective so far. And this is an interesting one. I fancy Offaly to win the game, but I think Fermanagh, they're going to be a sticky test, and it might be tough, this one for Offaly, but I'm going to go with them narrowly to get the 1-point victory. Cavan versus Tipperary, two sides who've shared a lot together. They won a provincial title a couple of years ago on the same day. They both got relegated down to Division 4 on the same day, and both got promoted from Division 4 on the same day last year. So two sides that seem to share a lot together. And I'm sure Cavan and Tipperary fans can reminisce about the good old days in pubs up and down the country watching this one. But Cavan looked sharper, didn't they, on the opening day, getting that victory against Westmeath. A big result to go away to Westmeath, a side that most people would see as a side to get promoted. To go there, beat them in their own backyard, massive, absolutely massive from a Cavan perspective. And, for Tipperary, like, they weren't a million miles away from beating down. Obviously, they got themselves a late goal, and, there was definitely some positives there from a Tipperary perspective. Conor Sweeney with 4 points again. Sean O'Connor looks like a good player, but they are missing a lot of players, and there's a few lads in that side that I wouldn't be too familiar with, like Mark Stokes, for example. Luke Boland in around the middle, Dean Carew in there, cornerback. There's been a lot of changes in Tipperary side, so I think Cavan, should have enough to win this one, in my opinion. At home, in Breffni Park, in their own backyard, they should have enough, in my opinion, to pull off the victory. Interested to see Darragh McVitie back on the side playing at centre-back as well, which is interesting considering he's normally in around the forward. So, an interesting experiment there from Mickey Graham. But one that, paid off. He kicked 2 points the last day. So, Cavan are looking fairly well. They're looking strong. Raymond Gallagher again doing the business, kicking 3 points the last day. So, plenty of positives from a Cavan perspective, and I expect them to get the victory and turn over the Premier County. Down versus Antrim, two sides that familiar with each other again, bit of a local rivalry, this one, obviously geographically and everything else. And you're looking at Down and thinking, big progress obviously been made under Conor Laverty. Look good in pre-season. They get that opening win against Tipperary. Jim McGuinness apparently involved, taking training sessions and everything else, which always gets the stories there. And, you listen to any of the experienced heads in the GEA or any, experts in the GEA, they all say Conor Laverty is a good up-and-coming manager and one of the best young managers in the game. And, Pat Harver in the last day scored 1-4. He looks like a very good player. Conor Francis in a wing-back got himself a goal as well. Barry O'Hagan got himself a score. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if there's more buy-in from the Kilcoo lads at some point. Like, you had Micheál Rooney playing, which I thought was good to see. Like, he was a player who, I think has been, one of the best players for Kilcoo in the last couple of years. So great to see him involved. So there seems to be a buy-in with Conor Laverty. There seems to be a sort of togetherness now and Down that wasn't there in the last couple of years. And, you'd look at Down as a side that should be battling for promotion, and they should be winning this. They're playing a side that I think, realistically speaking, are going to be thereabouts in the relegation battle. I think the one positive from an Antrim perspective and for Andy McEntee would be that they did get a lot of scores the last day. I mean, Ryan Murray scored 3 points. Pat Shivers got on the score sheet. McInhill got himself 2 points. Macaulay, a cornerback, got himself a score as well. So, they're getting scores all over the field, which is positive. And finishing with 12 points, they were very low scoring last year. So, there wasn't the worst return, in the game against the side who are probably going to be battling for promotion. But you'd go with Down here, I think, by 4 or 5 points. They should have more than enough. And if they do have aspirations of promotion, and there is that togetherness that everyone's saying, they should have enough to come through and get the victory. And I think that they will. Longford versus Westmeath. Longford, a side that, a lot of people expected to be Fermanagh last week, and it was another one of the sort of surprises of the week. And, going away to Fermanagh is always tough, and I think losing there isn't the worst result in the world, but I think it was the manner of the defeat, losing by 7 points in the end, really causing just a really, really disappointing result, I think, from an Offaly or from a Longford perspective. And yeah, it's hard to know. Like, under Paddy Christie, they looked really strong and they looked good under pre-season, but then they go in against Fermanagh, and from what Longford fans have been saying in the YouTube comments and everything else, and watching on in these videos, I mean, it appeared to be very flat and a poor performance, and something that we didn't see coming. And all of a sudden for Longford, with this game against Westmeath and a couple of difficult fixtures, they could find themselves in another relegation scrap like last year. And to be fair, I think I predicted them to finish 5th in the league, so I do think they'll be thereabouts. But You need to be, you can't start the league on a wrong foot, because all of a sudden you are playing catch up and you are leaving yourself in a bit of a dangerous position, and you are sort of looking over your shoulder. I mean, obviously Rian Brady didn't start the last day, so he'll have to come back in. Darren Gallagher got black carded as well, which was a big miss for 10 minutes during that match. But Westmeath on the other hand side, I was disappointed with them against Cavan. Finishing with 1-6, bit of a low scoring, like Desi Dolan's first game. Like with Westmeath being at home as well, I really expected a lot more from them, to be honest. And maybe you have to give credit to Cavan for how well they done defensively. But I'm expecting a bounce here for Westmeath. I know that they already have a Sam Maguire place wrapped up, and that's good for them. Fair play. Obviously winning the Tailteann Cup last year. But Westmeath should have aspirations to get into Division 2, more than enough quality, in the likes of Ray Cannella and Ronan O'Toole, John Heslin, and I expect them to go out and beat Longford. I'm going to say by 4 points. And, can Longford get a response in this game? Can there be a bounce under Paddy Christie after that defeat last week? I do expect so, but I think Westmeath should be too strong. I mean, they have the quality and the players to be winning this one. It's just a matter of applying themselves and going out and doing it. And the problem for Westmeath in the last kind of couple of years in the National League has been inconsistency and has been these type of games. So, yeah, I'm going to say that they go out and get the victory. Moving on to Division 4, starting with Waterford versus Carlow. Waterford, I was obviously speaking with Matthew early on Monday, and we were speaking about Waterford, and even with Conor McKenna last week in the preview show. Like, what can you say about Waterford? They sort of just are, unfortunately, not a predominantly footballing county, and, they will suffer big defeats, and, they're not going to be anywhere near promotion, unfortunately. And you'd imagine the buy-in down in Waterford, it's probably tough being a Waterford footballer at the best of times. But look, Carlow, like, fair play to them. Like, that was a big performance, to finish the day with 210 against Wicklow. Dara Foley finishing with 5 points seems to be a big player there. Ross Dunphy getting himself on getting a goal as well. Be interesting to see Colm Hutton. I think he came off the bench the last day and got a score. Like, he was one of their, I think he was their top scorer last year, one of their standout players. So they've got good forwards, Carlow. I think the worry about them is defensively. Conceded 210, and I think statistically one of the worst defenses last year when you add up how much they conceded. So I think there is a worry there from a Carlow perspective that they do concede quite a lot, and maybe there might be an opportunity for Waterford in their own backyard to possibly grab something from this, but I don't see it. I think Carlow should have enough to get the victory. And 3 points after 2 games, Carlow will be feeling fairly positive about that. And, the longer they can stay in the promotion hunt, the more confidence it will give them going into playing some of the tougher teams. Looking at it there, Jordan Morrissey won the last day as well. In at centre-back, he had a fairly impressive performance. So, yeah, positive signs from a Carlow perspective. London versus Leitrim, 2 sides very familiar with each other from the Connacht Championship, played each other. I think in the Tailteann Cup they played each other as well, I think, from what I remember. And obviously played each other in the league last year. And possibly could play each other in the Connacht Championship again. I think they might be fixed to play each other, possibly in the quarterfinals, for what I remember. Or is that Sligo who were playing them? I can't quite remember, to be perfectly honest. But nonetheless, look, Leitrim started very, very strong against Waterford, as you'd expect. Keith Byrne hit 110. Got some good players coming through there, the likes of Tom Pryor and whatnot. So positive signs from a Leitrim perspective going into this one. Jack Heslin scoring 1-1 as well. And I don't know about Emlyn Mulligan, obviously, if he's going to be involved this year, like he was involved last year. And he didn't play. Ryan O'Rourke as well, like, wasn't involved. So still lads to come back in, possibly from a Leitrim perspective, and still players to come back into the side. But yeah, Andy Moran's got these lads ticking well, and London's a tough place to go, and London are just a tough team to beat. I mean, they dramatically, with a lot, from what I heard, in injury time, kicked a last-minute goal to come away from Wexford Park with a draw. And looking at London in there with the likes of Enda Lynn in the side. Obviously Matthew Walsh, who got that goal, scored 1-1 from midfield. So yeah, like London, they're always a tough side. And I know a few people in YouTube comments and everything else have said like London are a team to cause a surprise. And who knows, like, could they go and beat Leitrim? I mean, that would be a massive surprise, a massive shock. And yeah, to be honest, I don't see it happening. I fancy Leitrim, but who knows? We've seen these shocks, we've seen these surprises before. But I'm going to go for Leitrim to grab the win there. I will say by 3 points. Wicklow versus Sligo, massive match, two sides. I expected to be in the promotion battle, and yeah, hard to know where it went wrong for Sligo. It would have been nice to see some highlights of that game on Allianz League Sunday. Like just looking at it here, Noel Murphy with 2 points. I mean, they didn't have Sean Carabine starting the last, or they did actually. Looking at him here, he scored 4 points. So it's hard to know really what went wrong for Sligo there. Like I think a lot of people expecting them to be thereabouts in the promotion race, and it just didn't prove to be that in the, or it didn't prove a good start against Laois. Maybe Laois are just a lot better than what we expected. But for Wicklow, with Oisin McConville coming in there, like a few defensive lapses at times, and you can see maybe there's going to be a few bumps in the road for Oisin McConville to get results. And I've mentioned them numerous of times. I like the looks of Kevin Quinn and Owen Darcy and a few younger lads who've come through this Wicklow side in the last couple of seasons. But yeah, it's a very hard one to call, this one. It could be another, it could be a draw. And to be fair, there are, like, I think there was 4 or 5, maybe 6 draws in the league last weekend. So you do get a lot of draws. And to be fair, I think this might be another one. To be honest with you, I think like it's, I think Sligo are the better side, but that defeat to Laois, losing by 6 points, it just makes you think maybe they're not quite as good as what we think they are. So I'm going to go for a draw. There. Laois versus Wexford, the last game to discuss. I mean, look, Laois, what a story, going away to Sligo, beating them. I think for Billy Sheehan's men, there's been a bit of turmoil in the last couple of years, beating or relegated back-to-back divisions, and beaten comprehensively in the championship by Wicklow, and didn't do anything of significance in the Tailteann Cup as well. So a lot of problems in Laois, a lot of worries in Laois sort of going into that match. Didn't look good in pre-season either, but getting Paul Kingston back on the side, 6 points. I mean, I remember him through the years for Laois being a real sort of towering full forward. And I wasn't aware he was back in the Laois side, so great to see him back in. Evan O'Carroll, 2 points. He's always been a player that's caught my eye for Laois, but probably has struggled with the fact that Laois have been losing the majority of their games, and Mark Barry, an under-20 player, coming in, Owen Lowry with 1-1 as well. So Laois, a lot of positivity after that victory. And I fully expect them to go out and beat Wexford. Wexford are such a strange side. It wouldn't surprise me if they won this game and then went out and lost to Waterford, because that's what you get from Wexford, and that draw to London, conceding a late goal, it's sort of vintage Wexford in many ways. It's been what they've been doing for the last 5-10 years, and until they can get out of this rut and build a bit of consistency, you just don't see anything changing with them. So yeah, I think Laois at home in their own backyard after a big victory away to Sligo. I expect them to go out and get the victory versus Wexford and beat them by 3, maybe 4 points. Maybe 4 points is what we'll go for there. But yeah, they're all the games. They're all the matches to discuss, and everything else. Obviously, a little bit of a different sort of preview this weekend, with the fact that, as I said, a little bit busy during the week. So I like to get these previews out on Wednesdays and Thursdays, not around Wednesday and Thursday. So that's the reason for that. And yeah, so let me know in the comments below. Let me know your predictions, what you think will happen in these games. In terms of player to watch and maybe a bet of the week. I mean, London beating Leitrim could be one. That could be a real surprise there. Just looking at some other possible upsets. Donegal beating Tyrone, I think, would be a a good sort of bet of the week. And to be fair, even putting a bit of money on Monaghan beating Kerry, although I do think Kerry will beat them. Given Kerry's changes and given a bit of a positivity with Monaghan beating or sort of their performance against Armagh away from home or at home, to be fair, I don't think Monaghan will win, so I think there's no point betting on it. But it might be worth looking at possibly. And then in terms of player to watch this week, I mean, it is a tough one. That like Jack Robinson looks very, very impressive, and I'll be excited to see how he does against Cork. Maybe from a Dublin perspective, do you get Jack McCaffrey into the side? Does he maybe make a start this week? Looking at it from even an Offaly perspective, could Keane Farrell come back in? So a lot of interesting moving factors from who to watch or what player to watch this week. So I'll certainly be curious to watch what your opinions are in the comments down below. But maybe even Darragh McVeety actually of Cavan might be a player to watch, especially after his 2 points for Cavan versus Westmeath. And of course, as well, playing in at centre-back, which is certainly an interesting one. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. Hit the like button and subscribe I've been speaking so long, I can't even say my words anymore. But yeah, like and subscribe if you could. If you're listening to this on audio podcasts and you've come this far, fair play, massive legend. Really, really appreciate that. And make sure to give the podcast a rating as well, because I have noticed a lot of people tuning into the audio podcast recently. I think we got like 500 listeners one of the weeks there last week, which was, I think, during the Kilmacud Crokes game, which is quite a high amount. We even broke into the top 70 podcasts in Ireland or something. So if people could give it a rating, that would be much appreciated, because we want to continue the growth. And if you could subscribe, be much appreciated. Getting closer to 4K subs. So hopefully we can get there soon. But anyway, lads, cheers anyone who tuned in. My name's Aaron. Let me know your predictions in the comments down below.